Ezethu, a very good afternoon to you. Thank you so much for being on ENCA. What were the main concerns where food prices are concerned for South Africans?
The majority of online South Africans are concerned about spiking food prices and also other goods and services such as utilities. And I think if we were to compare the South African findings with the rest of the global findings, we find that South Africans are at the top of the list of people who are experiencing these kind of increases in terms of food, goods and services. And I think women, as the study shows, are more concerned about these increasing food prices more than their male counterparts. And if you look at the findings in terms of age, you will notice that it's the older segment of the population that's above the ages of 50 that is more concerned about increasing food prices.
Speak to us about why that is then, the older people and women being particularly concerned about food prices.
In as much as the study does not go into more detail in terms of why this segment of the population is more concerned, I think one can just attribute, this concern to the different roles that people need to, to sort of play as they grow older. And I think the older population is responsible for taking care of their household needs. Hence, they are more worried about this increasing food price. And I think the same can be said about women due to, to the nature of their role in society and in their families, to be precise.
And the issue with this study, I suppose, or this poll that one could flag is that because it happens online, you have to wonder about how varied the respondents were demographically.
Absolutely. While the findings of the study in terms of the other countries may reflect or maybe present a nation or produce a national sample in terms of the overall population in South Africa, the views of the study reflect those of more people who are sort of not educated, who are also affluent and connected with internet access in their homes or either on their phones. So I think it's safe for one to sort of make that point across to say that these views are reflective of the more affluent segment of the South African population, given that the study was conducted online.
And the natural deduction, of course, then is if South Africans who have a bit more money are concerned about the rise in food prices and the cost of goods and services, the poor would be bearing the worst of it.
Absolutely. And as a matter of fact, in a recent study that we've just conducted, we found that, apart from a majority of South Africans being dependent on, social welfare, such as, the different grants that people are receiving from the government, about 80% of employed South Africans are also, taking a strain in terms of, changes that are happening in their income situations. And I think if the more affluent segment of the population is also, very worried and is experiencing this kind of pressure, one can also conclude that that the less affluent segment of the population is the one that's taking more strain when it comes to these increasing food prices.
And it's not all bad news for the middle class and higher income earners, because the good news that they're reporting is that people are spending less on transport and the associated costs at this time. But again, the worry there is how long will it last?
Absolutely. And I think at this point in time, one can assume that, because a large proportion of people are now working from home, they are now spending less on transport. But should, the regulations be eased and people be allowed to go back physically to their workplaces, then this, of course, will change, and one can expect it to change. And also looking at the COVID-19 situation, no one knows what the future looks like. There is so much uncertainty around it, and therefore, people can start being worried in terms of these prices. But for now, transport seems to be less of a concern to online South Africans.
Ezethu Mandlelize, spokesperson for Ipsos South Africa, thank you so much for your time this afternoon.